Earlier this month, a pastor in Ohio was put on trial, facing criminal charges. His crime? Helping the homeless in his community by giving them a warm place that's open 24/7 so that they can get out of the elements as winter closes in. He says he's doing what the church has been called to do. Yes, but the city of Bryan, Ohio says otherwise. Here now to share about this case is Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost. General Yost submitted an amicus brief, or what's called a friend of the court brief, in this case in support of the pastor and the church. Attorney General Yost, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, Tony.
All right, tell us more about this case.
Well, let's start with the basics. Of course, if you've got a public building, you have to comply with the same rules as everybody else. But what the law interpreting the First Amendment says is the government's not allowed to treat the church worse than anybody else. So Dad's place, I visited there and met Chris Avell, the pastor. Love the work that they're doing there. They take Matthew 25 seriously. The problem is they're in an old building right downtown. The city and the powers that be don't much like them having, folks that are down on their luck hanging out right there. But they are coming in and throwing the book at them on building code violations. Here's the problem. On the stand, the fire chief admitted that they give waivers all the time to these kinds of building code violations if the building is old and it would be too expensive to comply, or if there's some other reason that just the cost of the thing to the business is untenable. And they've actually given a waiver to a hotel where people sleep overnight in beds. So this is just like that case during COVID where the government tried to shut down all the schools, including the Christian schools, and left the casino open. The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals said you can't treat churches worse than you treat other businesses, and I'm very hopeful that when this is completely litigated, that Dad's place will still be standing.
So General Yost, are there other factors here? I mean, this would suggest, since they're giving waivers to others, that there could be some animus here on behalf of the city toward this church.
Yeah, and that's a question for the court. But regardless of what whether they're against this church or simply don't want, quote unquote, those people, what Jesus called the least of these, hanging around their downtown, the bottom line is, under the law, you're not allowed to treat the church worse than you treat everybody else.
Religious freedom would also, I would think, under the First Amendment, expression of faith, give the church the benefit of the doubt to even have more latitude, because this is a clear expression of the Christian faith.
It's a core function of a core belief of Christianity. In fact, Jesus talks in Matthew 25 about separating the sheep from the goats on the basis of how they act toward the hungry, toward the homeless. Here's another thing. They're trying him last week. They tried him on criminal charges. He might be the first guy in Bryan ever to have been tried on criminal charges. Usually a code violation means you get a ticket. If you ignore the ticket, they might take you to court to get a court order to say you gotta fix it, or even padlock the front door. But to put somebody in jeopardy of their liberty, they're trying to send a message here. And I'm hearing it, at least.
That's why it sounds like to me there's animus as I've read through the actions that they've taken. But we've also seen hostility from local governments toward churches, and I'm not suggesting it's the case in here, but I've seen it clearly in others, where increasingly city governments do not like churches because they're tax exempt when it comes to property taxes, and they would rather see, and this is a former storefront, which I assume that at some point in time generated tax revenue for the city, is that they don't like churches because they don't make money off of them.
Well, we don't have that in the record, and as former prosecutor, I live and die by the evidence I can produce on the record. What is on the record is that they're treating this church differently than they treat other people in their town, and that's a violation not only of the United States Constitution, but I would argue Section 7 of the Ohio Constitution.
Well, and I'm a radio talk show host, so I probe and try to stir things up a little bit, because I think there's more here than meets the eye. But I want to say thank you, as you have historically done, stepping in defense of the First Amendment, and here a clear, what I see as a clear violation of the rights of this church to help those who are down and out there in the city. So I thank you for stepping in. I thank you for joining us as always. General Yost, always great to see you.
Good to see you. Let me give a quick shout out to First Liberty. This is a privately funded group that is donating their legal expertise along with a couple of local firms to defend Dad's Place.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, because First Liberty, frequent guests on here, do great work. We're grateful for our partners like them and ADF that step in and do some of the heavy lifting on these cases. General Yost, have a Merry Christmas if I don't see you before Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.